there's a saying attributed to the Jesuits, give me a child until he is 7 and I'll give you the man. As in those early formative years of our lives, so much of our mind is shaped, and that's why teachers are in such an important position of trust. And these days, you often have both mom and dad working. So really, who's looking after the child and who has time to look over homework? The teachers' unions are amongst the most radical places around. And I have in front of me a story published in True North by our friend Melanie Bennet. The headline is, Ontario School Board embeds Islamophobia lessons while neglecting anti-Semitism. Freedom of Information documents reveal a stark double standard inside the Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board, where Islamophobia is woven deeply into the curriculum. And joining us now to talk about this very interesting investigation is Melanie Bennet. Melanie, nice to see you again.
Hi, thanks for having me on again.
You know, there's so much in this, and I want to recommend all our viewers check it out. It's on the Juno News website. You work for True North. The first thing I saw on the very first page of your story was sort of the motto of this learning goals. And you tell me if this is the motto of the whole school board, but it's 3 words: learn, disrupt, build. And I understand learn, and I understand build, but I'm thinking disrupt. You're teaching children. But that's just a tip of the hat to the fact that teachers' unions really are radical Marxist organizations designed not only to enrich their members, which we can understand, but to proselytize to other people's kids, to disrupt what? To disrupt what parents might think, to disrupt what the community might think. I think one of the most radical things in your entire story is that 3-word motto.
Yeah, the Learn, Disrupt, Rebuild is essentially, this is unique to the Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board, but it's essentially a set of teacher training resources. And when I say a set, I mean a very broad set. It contains hundreds and hundreds of teacher resource materials to embed social justice education within classes like art, literacy, geography, history, you name it. It's how to embed, this intersectional social justice within the education system. And I haven't seen this particular approach at other school boards. So this is very Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board orientated. And the interesting thing about Learn, Disrupt, Rebuild is it's been going on for several years, but in the last few years, they added on to it. And they added this Islamophobia training. And it goes pretty much from primary to, I haven't seen any secondary, but certainly primary level, elementary level. And yeah, it's essentially treating religion as race.
Yeah, I mean, it's really incredible. Canada has had an anti-Semitic crime wave for the last 2 years. And I mean actual crimes: trespass, mischief, uttering threats, vandalism. And we see it every weekend when pro-Hamas mobs, almost always foreign directed, scream at Jews in my own neighborhood in Toronto. But what the schools are teaching is not anti-Semitism, but Islamophobia, when in fact it's overwhelming the amount of anti-Semitism, but the focus in the schools is Islamophobia. And they have all sorts of lesson plans. I'm just going to read one from page 6 of your story. At least that's the page count when I print it out. This is one of the projects. This is one of the thought experiments the kids have. A group of kids see Wahaj's grandmother bring him his lunch. They tease her and call her Ninja Lady because she wears a burqa, a veil that covers her face. Well, if you're a kid, a Canadian kid from almost any background, and you see someone covered head to toe, I'm talking full, not just a head wrap like a hijab, but the actual face obscuring black cloth, that is not normal. That's not normal in most parts of the world. In fact, it's banned in many Muslim countries. And I'm not surprised that a kid would say that looks like a ninja. Not even in a hateful way, just this is such an astonishing sight to see. But that is taught as Islamophobia. You cannot have a reaction to someone dressed, by the way, not even a second's thought to how women are treated and what it means that a woman cannot feel sunlight on her face and a woman has to be, living in such a subordinate condition. And that's just one of 100 examples in your story of what is being taught to children of tender years.
Yeah, it seems to be a normalization of the introduction of religion into the education system, which is actually supposed to be secular. And even though the Learn, Disrupt, Rebuild teacher resource package has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of lessons, as far as I can tell, Islam is the only one treated in this particular intersectional social justice way. Like, you don't see this for Judaism, you don't see it for Christianity, you don't see it for Hinduism or anything else, although there's a slight mention of those within the Islamophobia documents, I guess, comparing them. But they're really treating religion as a racial category to kind of fit it into the diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is how education is sort of being transformed, right? So I have some concerns about that, about some of the aspects of religion being normalized within education when Canada has typically been a Christian country, and those are being downplayed all the time. I have so many stories, even just this Christmas, about how you can't talk about Christmas. We have winter concerts, we're downplaying Christmas and elevating other religions, and Islam seems to be the one that's taking the lead in this.
Yeah. I just want to give one more example from that same sort of lesson set that you show there. Fatima's friend tells her that she looks prettier when she does not wear a hijab. Now that's an opinion, and it may be true. And the thing about opinions is they're not really true or false. They're honest or not, they're reasonable or not. If someone is wearing a hijab and it obscures how they look, it obscures hair, and hair is a source of beauty in the Western tradition. And the official answer to that is Islamophobia. By treating Fatima's decision to wear a hijab a fashion, her friend is not respecting Fatima's beliefs. Of course, I'm old enough to remember the case of Aqsa Parvez, a Pakistani teenage girl who didn't want to wear her hijab, and so she was murdered by her father and her brother in a shocking case of an honor killing. So, it may be Fatima's decision as a child to wear hijab, or it may be the kind of pressure that Aqsa Parvez faced. But either way, someone is allowed to have an opinion that people look better without hijabs on. This is such brainwashing, and I absolutely see it being forced by these. And when I say communist teachers unions, they are communist. They may be race Marxists and gender Marxists and trans Marxists, but it's a form of Marxism.
Yeah, that's kind of the issue, and I would agree with you. I think there's a lot of extremism within the education system. A lot of it certainly is coming from the unions, from what I can tell. But we're not, the issue with turning this into DEI, a race category and all this stuff, is that we're going to struggle to be able to criticize this and keep the education system secular. And there are issues within Islam, some fundamentalist, some extremist issues, and they tend to be overlooked. They tend to be ignored or whitewashed. Another story that I had not too long ago was how the Ontario curriculum in world religions includes a teacher prompt about jihad being a personal struggle and a misunderstood concept, but never ever discussing any of the fundamentalist or extremist outcomes of some of that, terrorist attacks. So it feels like there's a whitewashing here by implementing it within diversity, equity, and inclusion pipelines. And I worry about that, because any sniff of anything fundamentalist from other religion, particularly Christian religion, is definitely pounced upon by the very same unions that you were discussing now.
Now, who's in charge of this? I can imagine that there's the school board, but above the school board is the provincial minister of education. And has there been any indication that, we have an allegedly conservative government in Ontario, but I don't think they are. I can't think of any measurement by which you could call them conservative. They don't even affiliate with their federal conservative cousins. Doug Ford spent the election undermining Pierre Poilievre, praising Mark Carney as his best friend. It's sort of gross. Has there been any reaction to this or other examples like this by the so-called conservative?
I'm not seeing that.
Sorry,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I know. So Paul Calandra is our education minister right now, and although he does talk tough about indoctrination. He will touch the issue at times, but he doesn't really give very clear answers. Now, a lot of the driving factor behind this is in the Ministry of Education. We have an Education Equity Secretariat, which can be responsible for certain things. In this case, this is a board-driven initiative. So it was a program, Learn, Disrupt, Rebuild is a program that was paid for by a consultant. It was a package delivered to this board. They were in charge of this. It doesn't come from the ministry, but I'm not seeing any signal from the Minister of Education to actually tackle the ideological elements within education. So I would like to, whenever I write a story, I constantly am asking the Ministry of Education what their views are, if they support these sorts of things. And I would love to get some answers from them on that, actually.